Yo, welcome back to another video, man. Today we got the low post, the biggest winners and losers of the NBA trade deadline. I don't care if he's in the back smoking crack. You know what I'm saying? I've been watching the low for like a good 2-3 years now. Pretty sure, maybe even longer than that. I don't know. My sense of time is completely garbage. But we got the low post. He's gonna be talking about the trade deadlines, the winners and losers. Yeah, I really love the NBA reactions. So I'm gonna try to or just sports reactions in general. So I'm gonna try to put more reactions out and stuff like that. And the biggest winners, we got Zach LaVine to the Kings. The Kings lost the trade. I say the Warriors are losers. The Spurs are winners. Lakers are winners. Would you consider Dallas Mavericks winners? Because technically it's a win now situation, but you traded away your future for a quote unquote win now situation, even though you made it to the finals the year before. I don't know. I'll call them losers. But they did gain 80, so I don't know. Let's see what low gonna post. Make sure you like and subscribe. The original video gonna be linked down below. And without further ado, let's get into this video, man.
You know way too faded, I know. Baby girl, you waiting. Girl, I see the way that thing moved on the way in. Yeah, I'm trying to slay it. No, I ain't playing. You don't care.
Low post.
Now that right there was a trade deadline for the history book. The 2025 NBA trade deadline will go down as one of the greatest in NBA history. And normally I slap that on top of a title and put a crazy thumbnail next to it just to get you to click on it. But this time it is true. We saw the face of the franchise, someone that a lot of people deem as untouchable, actually being traded. Victor Wembanyama finally got the point guard that everyone knew that he needed. And yet again, Kevin Durant finds himself in a very tight.
And who starts in the Spurs, bro? Because they have plenty of guards. They got OD guards over there. I can't think of their names right now, but they have OD guards over there.
Situation and a bunch of other drama in between. And because of this, of course, I have to make a video wrapping up the entire deadline. Please forgive me if I skate through a lot of these transactions, especially the ones that I've already made individual videos for. I just want to make a video kind of giving my overall thoughts with a lot of these trade transactions, give you the winners and losers, and kind of just give an overall wrap up of what happened over the past
Utah winners. What's the name? The owner for the Utah nigga. That nigga be stacking up picks and getting really good role players. And have you noticed every time there's a trade that goes down, the Utah is connected to it in some sort of way? Like every single time, bro.
Days. So first, let's talk about the trade of the century where Luka Doncic was sent to the Los Angeles Lakers, and in return, the Dallas Mavericks received Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick. What hasn't been said about this deal? Two general managers got together to make a decision to trade two top 10 players and told no one in the NBA at all. And I don't know what's crazier, the fact that they want us to believe that this trade was done in a genuine manner, or the fact that there's this growing amount of people who believe that the Mavericks aren't massive losers. Now, did the Mavericks get better defensively? Of course. Adding AD to a team that's surrounded with complementary defensive pieces will not only elevate him back into best defensive player convos, but of course the Mavericks will be one of, if not the best defensive units in the NBA. And also, Max Christie is a sneaky good pickup. I'm pretty sure a lot of the Mavericks fans out there have already realized that. A two-way wing that everyone would love in the NBA. The definition of 3-and-D. Love to have him on the roster. Trust me, I'm a Laker fan. Love to have him on my roster again. However, increased production defensively is not going to make up for what this team is going to lack on the offensive side of the floor. You effectively still have a bunch of players.
And they need a playmaker, bro. Don't get me wrong. Like Kyrie's a scorer. I don't really look at him as a playmaker. And comparing Kyrie's playmaking, he can pass the rock. Don't get me wrong, but it's like comparing like Kyrie's playmaking and facilitating skills to like Luka's is like night and day. You know what I mean?
Players who are best suited when someone else is generating shots for them outside of Kyrie Irving. And even though people are, for whatever reason, high on Kyrie getting the ball back in his hands, there is no track record of him being able to manage an offense by himself whatsoever. He's always looked better playing next to another ball handler, such as a LeBron, a James Harden, and last year with Luka Doncic. I don't know why people are convincing themselves that, oh man, I would love to see Kyrie with the ball back in his hands. He's not the passer and playmaker that you would need on the roster, where again, a lot of these players are going to be relying on getting shots from his ability to create for them. I just don't know how people are conditioning themselves to believe that's what any team would want.
But I feel like Kyrie can do it, but at a semi level. You know what I mean? I feel like he can do it at a semi level. Like if the task is to like facilitate and stuff like that, I feel like it might take him a while, but I feel like he would get it down. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Luka, but you know what I mean?
In which Kyrie's at right now. And speaking of age, when you have Kyrie who's going to be 33 in the beginning of the playoffs and Anthony Davis is going to be 32, you have effectively now leveraged a 7-year window for a 3-year window. And the only way that you would ever do that, and I do mean ever do that, is if the trade made you an instant title favorite. And even if you believe that after this deal was done, that the Mavericks somehow got better, they did not become so better that they should be instant favorites in the NBA this season. Like, not at all. It's going to take at least another training camp to get all of the irons kind of smoothing out. And even though, again, I like this team, what it looks like defensively now, I just don't see how anyone can believe that they're not massive losers. And then when it comes to the Lakers, of course, massive winners. You're receiving a 25-year-old superstar that, even though a lot of dirt is being put on his name, still led his team to the finals while being fat, sloppy, and not even 100% healthy. I don't know how anybody can. I'm just lost at words, the fact that people are trying to spin this another way. The only knock that I can see from the Lakers angle is that this season, they more than likely are going to take a step back. The Lakers definitely felt like they were one move away from competing at a much higher level than a lot of people anticipated heading into the season. And so everything was really working well for them. But now we have Luka on the roster, even though that may be an upgrade in talent, the playing style has to restructure around what Luka does best. Sure, the Lakers also went out and got Mark Williams, but offensively, it makes sense. But defensively, he's just not going to be able to fulfill what this team needs immediately, especially how young he is. In theory, he should be, but I do believe it's going to take a while. But a much bigger problem for the Lakers, the elephant in the room, is what exactly this team was going to look like beyond the LeBron years, and now you have that answer. And trust me when I say it was going to be much harder to find a player like Luka Doncic than trying to fill out the rest of the roster in hopes to make a finals run this year. So A++++++. Moving on to the Jimmy Butler trade, this is something that we covered pretty extensively on this channel.
That is $60 million. $60 million a year for what? How old is Jimmy Butler? 35? $60 million a year for a 35-year-old Jimmy Butler is absolutely insane, bro. I don't understand why teams get so desperate to make bad decisions. Like the Warriors, real life, like I don't know, bro. They had to make a move, but like this move was just idiotic. You know what I mean? Like, bro, like why are you paying Jimmy Butler $60 million a year? For 2 years, bro. That's insane, bro. Isn't he making more than Steph Curry? I know Steph Curry ain't making $60 million a year, bro. He probably making like 55, 58. He probably making more than Steph.
Effectively, Jimmy in Miami were not seeing eye to eye on a contract extension. He was making a lot of fuss and ruckus while he was in Miami to the point
that I seen a report talking about Pat Riley was crying in his negotiation trying to get Jimmy Butler to get back. Bro, you a grown-ass man crying about a player, bro. Relax, buddy.
The Heat just got tired of him and told him, you just need to sit down. You're going to be suspended indefinitely until we can figure things out. The problem was that there really weren't that many suitors for Jimmy, especially for the amount of money he was asking for. And also, he wanted to go to a very unique situation. Memphis was open to the idea of trading for Jimmy, but he said, don't trade me there because I'm not going to sign an extension. Originally, the Warriors also got the same treatment, and it seemed as if like Phoenix was going to be the team that was willing to trade for Jimmy. But unfortunately, Bradley Beal was unwilling to waive his no trade clause, and then Kevin Durant did not want to have anything to do with any transaction that ended him up with the Golden State Warriors. So unfortunately, Jimmy's options basically kind of just dwindled down to getting signed with the Warriors, and the Warriors were willing to give him the contract extension, and I believe that's the biggest reason why this deal got done. There was a lot of moving parts, but the more important ones are the fact that Jimmy Butler is now with the Golden State Warriors.
Andrew Wiggins at the Heat. Bucko.
The Miami Heat received Andrew Wiggins and actually a first-round pick, which in my opinion makes Miami instant winners. We're talking about an organization that
I did not know they had a pick.
They had very little leverage because they had a player that did not want to be on the team, and everyone knew that Jimmy did not want to be on that team as well. So normally in that situation, bro, you have no leverage when coming to the table to try to negotiate. However, they found another team that was even more desperate than them as the Golden State Warriors fell off the face of the earth after the first 15 games, find themselves struggling to stay above 500, and they knew for for a fact they needed to find a second option to place next to Steph Curry. The fact that Miami not only got a first-round pick, but also Andrew Wiggins as well, really does speak to the level of volume.
I did not know they had a first-round pick too.
And I certainly don't believe that a trio of Wiggins, Hero, and Bam is going to make a lot of noise. However, when it's time to pivot off of those three players or potentially just redirect in a different direction, Wiggins should yield you even more return when it's time to trade him, because I do believe his game is going to travel pretty well amongst a lot of teams in the NBA. But then when it comes to the Warriors, man, this is just massive losing right now. Jimmy Butler, is he an upgrade from Andrew Wiggins from a talent perspective? Absolutely.
But bro is 35, bro. Bro, 35 though.
That the defense
and $60 million a year. The
unit of Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green will be hellacious if this team is able to make the playoffs. But that's an if. The Warriors are still losing games. They're still going to struggle from three-point land. And defensively, they've already been a really solid unit. Of course, they can improve. But again, I just don't know if it's going to be enough to propel them into playoff conversations. And certainly isn't enough to propel them into deep postseason run conversations, in my opinion. And for the price point of 121 or 111 or $100+ million for a 2-year extension for Jimmy Butler. Again, an upgrade in talent, but that's a pretty steep penny that you're paying for the upgrade in talent. To make matters worse, we already know for a fact that there were other ways for the Warriors to improve this roster without having to move Andrew Wiggins and possibly not even having to move a first-round pick as well, after all of the opportunities to trade for Lauri Markkanen and Zach LaVine, not only during the offseason, but again at the deadline, and they still decided to not do so.
I've been hearing Lauri Markkanen trade offers for like the last 3-4 years, bro. Like, when is he going to get traded, bro?
Massive losers, and I do mean massive losers. Now, the other trade was De'Aaron Fox moving to the San Antonio Spurs. Again, another story that we covered pretty consistently on this channel. De'Aaron Fox was frustrated with the organization being mediocre. His team was not able to propel themselves into concrete playoff standings, and so they found themselves still fighting, and that's something that De'Aaron Fox did not want to do long term. He wanted to put himself in a situation to where he felt like a team that had a much higher ceiling than just a 7th or 8th seed, so there were demands being made from De'Aaron Fox behind the scenes, and the Kings had no other choice but to meet those demands because his contract was coming to a conclusion sooner than later. And because of this, the Spurs decided to get involved because they know they needed a point guard to pair next to Wemby, as Victor has been able to exceed expectations much quicker than a lot of people originally anticipated. And a trade that a lot of people thought was going to be fairly simple became a 3-team trade, as De'Aaron ended up with the San Antonio Spurs, Zach LaVine, and some draft capital ended up with the Sacramento Kings.
And I'm not gonna lie, there was reports saying that De'Aaron Fox didn't like Mike Brown gone for some reason. So they got rid of Mike Brown the year before just for him to leave the year after. And Mike Brown was a great coach, bro. Like, we need to start a trend to stop blaming coaches for like the failures of the team, bro. Because Mike Brown was such a great coach. What's Buddy from the that got fired from the Raptors, bro? Oh, what's his name? He won Coach of the Year. He got fired in the season after, bro. Like, being an NBA coach got to be hell, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
And Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and their own first-round pick ended up with the Chicago Bulls. This right here was a doozy of a trade because I don't think anybody thought that Zach LaVine was going to be moved during this transaction, especially because the Spurs had more than enough assets to move in this deal to get it done if the Kings made certain demands, but it seemed as if they weren't willing to do so. And because of this, the Spurs turned out to be massive winners. Being able to pick up Fox without having to move Castle or Vassell or any of the other endless amount of draft capital, in particular the draft picks that you have from the Atlanta Hawks during this deal, is pretty crazy. And when you look at the draft picks that they end up sending over to the Sacramento Kings and the one draft pick that they end up giving to Chicago, it was Chicago's own draft pick that they received back, a 2027 first-round pick from the Spurs, but the Spurs are going to be much better. A 2025 Charlotte pick, but that is lottery protected, and it's going to translate to 2 seconds, and a 2031 Minnesota Timberwolves pick, which, again, is pretty far in the future, and you can certainly argue that it seemed as if the Timberwolves are moving in a direction where Ant more than likely won't be on the roster that later on down the timeline, but it's going to take a while for that to really materialize. So yeah, massive wins for San Antonio, and they gave themselves all the flexibility in the world to continue to add to this roster in the upcoming offseason. When it comes to the Bulls, getting a draft pick in return, even if it is your own, I guess is some win. I don't know why you got involved. Zach LaVine was having arguably the best year that we've seen out of him in his career, certainly the best year that we've seen out of him in quite some time, and so his stock was rising. Even though the price point was still pretty steep, I kind of feel like there was going to be another team that was going to be desperate enough to go after him, but hey, what do I know?
And Zach LaVine having a career year too.
Sacramento Kings. I always find it interesting on what the Kings are going to do beyond the Fox years because they've already made a pretty steep commitment to this roster, in particular to the contract that they gave to DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis.
Oh yeah, the DeMar DeRozan trade is.
Those are two players that I don't know what type of return they will yield if they had to hit the restart button. And so trying to stay competitive in some regards makes sense. But however, Zach LaVine, as much as I may love him, he's not good enough to fulfill all of the needs that this team desperately is looking for to be fulfilled for them to be a better unit than what they are right now. They're still a play-in team at best. And with other teams in the Western Conference making improvements that are below them, such as the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks, and the Kings are still losing games, I have no other choice but to just label them as massive losers, and effectively they're just prolonging the inevitable, and that is blowing the whole thing up.
I just noticed, bro. DeMar DeRozan and what's his name? Zach LaVine are teammates again.
Now we have some smaller trades, but still going to be very impactful. Earlier today, the Cavaliers actually got into a deal with the Atlanta Hawks, sending DeAndre Hunter to Cleveland. In return, the Hawks received Karis LeVert, George Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2.
Bro, you remember when Karis LeVert? I used to think Karis LeVert was going to be the next big thing when he was going off in Cleveland, bro. Was it Cleveland or was it the Nets? Oh, which was it, bro? When he first busted out the scene, bro. I used to think he was gonna be so cold, bro. No, it was Brooklyn. But it was a year that he like just busted out the scene going crazy. He was 26. Yeah, for the Nets. He was going, like, he was averaging, what? He was averaging 20. No, it was Indiana. He was going off for Indiana. I thought he was going to be so cold, and then, like, he just got traded, and then he just never been the same, bro. I thought he was going to be cold as hell, bro.
Hunter found himself losing favor with the Hawks this season, especially due to the fact that Dyson Daniel and Jalen Johnson started to emerge as quality players, and also his inconsistent shooting at times certainly left him unplayable depending on the night in which he wasn't being able to knock down his shots. However, for this Cavaliers team to pick up someone like DeAndre Hunter is a massive, and I do mean massive, W. Karis LeVert was having a really solid season. However, with the ability to just stagger minutes between both D Mitch and DG, there really wasn't that need for another ball handler and playmaker. But being able to provide another quality defensive-oriented player on this wing who can still knock down the three-point shot really does erase some of the defensive concerns that people have.
And he's a lot older. He's a lot older than I really thought.
And again,
he's like 30,
identity
30
when it comes to the three-point shooting as well. Now, in terms of the Hawks, I have no idea what they're doing. I already knew that they were looking to trade DeAndre Hunter because of the amount of money they were paying for someone who effectively was being moved to the bench. And they had to give Dyson Daniel a contract extension because that was coming up. And then Jalen Johnson, his contract extension is going to kick in next year. So shedding some of this salary made sense, but I just thought that you were going to receive something a little bit more of value in return. And again, this is a situation where if this is the only thing that you are going to get in return, I just kind of feel like you should just hold on to your assets because this is a really, really massive yikes. Compound this with the trade of sending Bojan Bogdanovic to the Clippers, and in return, the Hawks only receiving Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. Again, another salary type of move where you're just shedding.
That's another player I thought it was going to be cold.
Books. And it just feels like this is a team that's also kind of just preparing for them to lose Trae Young. For those who don't know, next year is the last guaranteed year left on Trae Young's deal, and the Hawks are just moving like there's no sense of urgency to try to retain talent on their roster. They actively got worse from a talent perspective at the end of this deadline. A massive loss for this team. It feels like they're more so gauging and getting ready for years beyond Trae Young on the roster and kind of shedding a lot of salary instead of adding more talent to the team, which really speaks volumes to where Atlanta is at. And I do believe a lot of teams are also preparing for that moment as well. So good luck to my Hawks out there. Massive loser.
What team?
Small but semi-large.
What team should Trae Young be on, bro? That's gonna fit and make sense, like money wise. Oh, just seeing Trae Young on like a competitive team is gonna be so cold, bro. I used to think Bones Highland was gonna be cold too. I'm not gonna lie.
Deal where the Pelicans sending over Brandon Ingram.
I mean, he still is, but he just needs play time.
Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a 2026 first-round pick from Indiana, but it is top 4.
I'm also waiting for Rob
2031
second-round
pick. In my opinion, the Pelicans just significant losers here. I get the idea that you were stuck with BI, and of course you got to get something in return for him, but I just would have just kept him on the team. I feel like this roster is always lacking something due to the amount of injuries that they continue to sustain, but I get it. You had to shed salary. BI was asking for a lot lot, and I do mean a lot of money, and so you just had to get something in return. Is there a possibility that draft pick will become a value? Possibly, potentially, but more or less the Pelicans just got players that they're more than likely going to buy out. Bruce Brown is definitely on the buyout list, or at least perceived to be. Kelly Olynyk can provide you a little bit of floor spacing at the 4 spot, playing next to Zion if they decide to play small ball lineups, but I just believe that this is a really, really bad way to just go out from the last piece from the Anthony Davis trade, getting very little in return. And then when it comes to the Raptors, I think they're small winners here. The type of contract that BI is going to receive will be very interesting, but overall, just keeping talent around Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett, I think is actually a really good move from a team that's trying to establish themselves. Way too often, I see organizations put nothing but very bad NBA players around their young core, and I do believe that damages a lot of their growth. Being able to play alongside another quality NBA player is a skill, and it does take some reps to getting used to. Scotty Barnes missing out on those reps does not aid him at all, especially in terms of the growth that we're seeing out of him in terms of a ball handler and a decision maker off the fly. So I do like the fact that they're just keeping talent around him. The price point that it comes at, who knows? And also, I still kind of believe that the Raptors should just blow it up because Scotty is making some developments and leaps, but I don't think he's going to be so good that it's going to really change anything in the near future for Toronto, and they could be just potentially prolonging that. But overall, I still like the idea of just keeping talent on this roster. And then we have the Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton trade. This right here.
As a Damian Lillard fan, and a semi-Bucks fan, what the hell are we doing? I get like Chris Middleton has been like he's an injury-prone type of player, but Kyle Kuzma, like the nigga that got a mixtape of air balls next to Jordan Poole, bro. Like, I don't understand, bro.
Was kind of crazy. The Bucks needed to make some significant changes to their roster, and I thought it was going to come at the expense of moving Bobby Portis because he just hasn't been looking that good at all. But there was constant conversations about Chris Middleton also being moved. He hasn't really been able to bounce back, constantly being injured, and even when he does play, it obviously the production just does not justify the amount of money he's getting paid this year, and more than likely he's going to opt into his contract next year as well. And that's something that the Bucks, a team that's already over the second tax apron, just was more than likely not going to be able to manage financially. So they moved off of him, sent him to Washington, and in return they receive Kyle Kuzma being the biggest name. Now, Kuzma, he's having a terrible year, like across the board. The finishing isn't as good as it once was.
And he's playing with the Wizards as a second option, bruh. And he's playing garbage. He's playing with the Wizards as a second best player next to Jordan Poole. And he's having a career low year. I wouldn't say career low, but like he's having a down year.
Shooting across the board just isn't there, and there's just a lot of lack of development and growth out of Kuzma within his time in Washington. This year in particular is the worst year we've seen out of him. However, if you are the Bucks, you could argue to yourself, hey, we are probably going to get a player that is either A, going to be motivated to play better, or B, going to just look better because he's going to be more of a complementary piece next to Dame and Giannis and going to get way better looks than he was getting out in Washington, where he had to do much more creation for himself and everyone else, which is something that Kuzma should not be doing. So the Bucks are basically just rolling the dice that Kuzma is going to be an improvement from Chris Middleton at a lower price point. You know, I see what they're doing there, but Kuzma's having a really, really bad year. Like, arguably the worst year of his career. I would actually say it is the worst year of his career. And honestly, I feel like I probably just would have kept Chris Middleton throughout the rest of the season and then trade him as an expiring contract during the offseason and try to get something better in return than Kyle Kuzma. But hey, that's just me. And then finally, we had the teams that did not do anything. The Brooklyn Nets, everyone thought they were going to trade either Cam Johnson or Nick Claxton, if not both of them, but they did not. And in my opinion, honestly, I feel like it was a good decision to not trade any of them. Not because I didn't want to see no another team, because I certainly did. However, if the return wasn't there, hold on to your assets and just wait until another team becomes desperate enough to throw you a much larger package. Both of those players should yield multiple first-round picks, if not some quality young players. So hold on to your horses. Don't rush into anything because you're not really in a rush to do anything whatsoever if you're the Nets. Then we have another team that didn't do anything, and I feel like they could have added some slight additions to the roster, but it was going to be very difficult to do so, and hopefully it doesn't bite them on the backside. That team being the Denver Nuggets. I don't want to label them as massive losers, in large part because they've been able to really turn it around over the last month and a half, but the lack of talent and rotational players on this roster is still pretty undeniable. They're still relying pretty heavy on some young players to emerge as quality rotation pieces, and from time to time, a lot of these players do look that way, and Strothers and Peyton. But of course, having a 3-point shooter on this roster that can still play some quality defense, or at least just give you some minutes out there, spacing out the floor alongside Russell Westbrook, would be heavily appreciated. I do mean heavily appreciated. But don't want to kill the Nuggets here because, again, they turn things around. And I do believe a much bigger problem with them is that MPJ contract that they have to address sooner than later. But until then, Denver is still a really solid unit, has a lot of things going for them. Just, of course, with the loss of talent over the past 2 off seasons, you would like to see them make some type of moves, but yet here we are. And with that being said, I now bring you, in my opinion, the biggest loser, because though a lot of people are saying the Mavericks are the biggest losers, and it certainly felt that way early on the deadline, by the end of it all, I personally believe the Phoenix Suns, by far, and I don't believe it's even close, are the biggest losers at this deadline, because at bare minimum, the Mavericks got a player that addressed some concerns, still a top 10 player in Anthony Davis, solid pickup in Max Christie, and a first rounder. When it comes to the Suns, this is an underachieving team, 500, battling for a play-in position, and they knew they needed to make significant alterations to their roster. To be fair, Yusuf Nurkic is off the roster. He was the worst starter in the NBA, in my opinion, at least for a team that was trying to make the playoffs, but that's not going to be enough. They were trying to trade Beal all deadline long, but he was unwilling to waive his no-trade clause, and I think at that moment is when things really start to seep in how screwed Phoenix was. And they were so screwed that they actually started to entertain the idea of trading Kevin Durant, and they did so without telling KD. And I think that's where things really are going to get bad for Phoenix. Now the reports claim that the locker room is filled with toxic and unsettling vibes because they don't necessarily know what the future is going to look like. And it's very clear that the front office doesn't have faith in the unit as it's currently constructed. And in all honesty, the only way that they can make any type of additions or make some moves.
But everybody knew trading for Bradley Beal. When they first traded for Bradley Beal, everybody knew it was going to be shit. Like, no one looked at the team and be like, oh, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, oh my God. And they had no bench. They had literally no pieces around them. Like, it was going to be garbage either way, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everybody knew it was a bad move. I don't even know why they traded for Bradley Beal. Knowing that the contract that he has with a no-trade clause and the amount of money he's making, that's OD, bro.
For this roster in hopes for the better is by moving Kevin Durant, because Bradley Beal, again, no trade clause. Devin Booker, the younger player, and is under contract for a long period of time. KD only has 1 year left on his deal and hasn't made any clear indication that he's going to sign long term, especially because he is an older player. So yeah, trading KD makes a lot of sense, but when you're not able to pull off that trade, you kind of now leave your whole roster in a state of flux because they don't know what the hell is going on. And so that's why I believe the Suns are by far the biggest losers. But hey, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section below, how you enjoy the deadline, who you believe is the biggest winners and losers. And if you missed any of my videos over the last week, kind of outlining a lot of the rumors and trades that happened with these individual videos, not only hit the subscribe button, but also check out my videos. I'll probably make a playlist wrapping up every single last thing. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.
And that's the video, man. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. The original video gonna be linked down below. Make sure you sub to the Low Post. He makes great videos, bro. Great videos, bro. I'm probably gonna be reacting to more of his stuff to keep up with the NBA and stuff like that, since I already watch him. You know what I mean? So might as well just turn on the camera and react. You know what I mean? Make some content off of it. But he makes really good content. It makes really good NBA content. So and yeah. I'll see y'all in the next video, man.